Painful lower back doing the RDL. We're gonna fix that today. I'm John Jewett의 with J3 University. We elevate physique education. Today, I know we wanna target the hamstrings with the RDL, but many times you leave the gym just with a sore lower back. So we're gonna see how to fix that and brace where we get the most out of our hamstrings, give some right cues to set up this and get more out of the lift, and also see if the RDL even is right for you. So the hamstrings, to know a little bit about it, that it does cross two joints, the knee joint and the hip joint. And so to get this muscle fully in its short position, we go through hip extension and knee flexion. You see my band gets a little bit loose. As I go into hip flexion, we start stretching our band. If we go into knee extension, we get a big stretch in our hamstrings. So that's a fully lengthened out hamstrings. So to get to your RDL, this position, just like we would be in this, would fully train the hamstring from a lengthened position. And the hamstring would function to purely extend the hips forward, but also if we were just in a leg curl, right, it also functions just to flex at the knee. So the idea of the RDL is to train the hamstrings through hip extension, but the hamstring has nothing to do with the spine. So all the core is to contract and stabilize the spine isometrically. And here's where we're gonna run into some lower back pain. We're not able to stabilize the core, also just not moving purely at the hip joint. So outside of only bracing the core, a lot of issues can come about through losing your spinal brace through dropping the chest first instead of pushing the hips back. So we're gonna look at how to fix that as well. Another one is allowing that bar to drift away from the shins, which also puts more loading onto the lower back. And finally, another mistake as well is simply just moving too fast in the movement. We have a lot of joints that we're having to control at one time. So if you're moving too dynamically, it's really easy to lose a spinal brace, allow more knee bend to happen, or let that bar drift out away from you. So next we're gonna see, how do we fix this? Okay, so to fix all this, number one, it's core bracing. As I mentioned earlier, we want all the core muscles to function. It's an isometric contraction to stabilize the spine. So this is the sandwich drill of putting your hands by your sides and squeezing in to the sides. And take a breath, pushing your hands out, and then brace the core like someone's about to punch you in the stomach. This is the core brace you want in our RDL. Also, I would make sure that you're not having a huge lumbar arch in the spine, because it's much harder to contract these core muscles when they're really lengthened out and stretched. So I keep people pelvis over sternum. Just like if I was about to punch you, you contract the abs in. So we want that breath out into the abdomen, pushing those hands and the sternum over the pelvis. This will stabilize the spine. And so what you do is try to get in that position, raise core, and then you'll hip hinge at the hips, and you want this locked in the whole time. If you struggle doing this, you can start training this with a dead bug and using a huge Swiss ball. And this will allow you to teach how to brace the core and move the limbs independently. The key with this is driving the lower back into the ground, flexing that abdominal wall, and then allow that one arm to go up into shoulder flexion and the opposite leg to go into hip extension, squeeze the ball at the same time, and then switch hands. You can do 5 reps each side, and you'll find this is extremely challenging. Use this as pre-activation before going into your hip hinge work. The other fix to this is also, like I mentioned, the chest moving forward first. People have a really hard time understanding how to shift the hips back, because we just want the hip to function simply as a hinge joint. So what I'm going to tell you to try if you struggle with this is take your foot, heel against the wall, then take the other foot just a step out right in front of the other one. Then level up your stance, and here's where you're going to have a movement of trust, where you're going to have to reach with your butt back towards the wall and let the chest drop at the same time. And this is going to have to cue your butt to the wall. You're going to feel those hamstrings stretch a lot, and then reverse it and bring the hips back underneath the chest. And this is going to be exactly what you're going to want to do with a barbell. Another thing I mentioned is about stability. If you lose stability, you're gonna lose your ability to drive force, and also when other joints can start moving, start loading tissues just like the lower back and spine like we don't want. So one thing is mid-foot pressure. A lot of times you've heard keep the weight on your heels. However, just keeping your weight on your heel can make a lot of instability. So we want in our squats or hip hinges is mid-foot pressure. So what I'm gonna tell you is plant this big toe down as you're going down. What you're gonna feel in the arch of your foot is about equal pressure there, almost like you're flattening out the arch of your foot. What happens if you watch my humerus, as I plant this big toe down, you'll see that this humerus internally rotates. This puts the knee in a really good position to do hip extension. Just like a sprinter running, you're really powerful in this stance. We don't see people run like this, right? It's not very optimal for the glute to work, for the hamstrings to work. So this is why exactly we want to cue big toe down to put the knees forward and also have really good foot stability so we're not getting all wonky in our RDL and falling over. Another thing about bracing the core is what a lot of people don't know is the lats are actually part of the core. So if you're not properly engaging your lats, you're also going to lack some of the spinal stability, especially all the way up into some of that mid-thoracic territory. So what we can do to set up in the beginning of our RDL is rather than, because we're already gripping this bar, and that bar is going to internally rotate the shoulder, and we're now getting pushed over forward, right? So it's really easy for us to have this weight dragging us forward, loading more the lower back. So what I would do is cue, bring the scapulas together, squeeze the back, and push them down. So this is going to bring that shoulder more midline and engage your lats by driving the hands downward. And that's going to give you a lot more stability in your brace. This also might be why you find dumbbells might take a little bit of strain off your lower back, because with a dumbbell, it's not so far out in front of you, and it brings those dumbbells a little bit closer to your sides in a better position to brace. So if you're struggling with the barbell RDL in your lower back, you might try dumbbells just for that reason. All right, so we know what we should do to have a really good brace. So before we start a lift, we have that mid-foot pressure, the big toes down, right? We're gonna have that good core brace like we're about to get punched in the stomach. We're now engaging our lats, and we're ready to do our RDL. So we're gonna reach our butt back towards the wall, and again, a slow cadence is what we don't want. We don't want to go really fast. So the hips move at the same time as the chest is lowering. And where do we stop is the key here. Is we stop when we feel our hamstrings get a little bit of tension and tightness. Don't worry about where the bar is in relation to the knee. The real stop point is that we're training the hamstrings, that we fully lengthen out the hamstring. When you feel that stretch, this is as far as you need to go. I would do a slight pause, and then we reverse the motion. So the hips come forward as the chest is rising at the same time, back up to the top. And that is how we execute an RDL. Do we even need an RDL? I know in bodybuilding, a lot of times we've been told you have to do a hip hinge. But the first thing you should ask yourself is, do you need an exercise that can train the hamstrings, the glutes, and the spinal rectors? For someone, you might have huge glutes and no hamstrings. The RDL might not fit that purpose well. So for the hamstrings, so like I showed you earlier, to fully lengthen it out, you get into hip flexion and knee extension. You can do that with a seated leg curl. And then to train the shortened position, you can also do that with a lying leg curl. So if you purely need hamstring growth, you very well can train the hamstrings completely just with those two leg curls. And especially if the rest of your program maybe has a back squat that trains the glute and the spinal rector, that very well could fit your needs and how you can program it. The negative with the RDL is it is a lot of systemic stimulus for a lot of muscle groups, but also a lot of fatigue too. So it's going to eat up a portion of your volume of your program that might be better allocated specifically to areas that you might need. So how do these compare growth-wise? We've seen studies by Evan comparing seated leg curls in RDLs, a little bit, actually a bit more EMG activity in a seated leg curl. Now there's also another study by Wright that shows very similar EMG activity. Now, so what does that mean for growth over the long term? We don't have a study that actually compares those. However, we do have studies comparing lying leg curls and seated leg curls, and seated leg curls beating out lying leg curls as they're training the hamstring in a more lengthened position. So what I would suggest for full hamstring development is to make sure that you do train the hamstring in the fully shortened and the fully lengthened position, which could be an RDL and a lying leg curl, could be a seated leg curl and a lying leg curl, or if you really, really need a lot of hamstring growth, you likely want to be doing all three: a lying leg curl, a seated leg curl, and probably a hip hinge somewhere in your program. But just keep in mind, don't force an RDL into your program. If you need a hip hinge, find the one that you connect well with, that you can sustain and train without beating up your lower back. So the RDL can be a great exercise if that's the exercise that you need. Don't let it beat up your back. Use these cues to correct and get the most out of your RDL. If you want to learn more about the exercises that are right for you, how to cue them, how to set them up, check out our applied hypertrophy course at j3university.com. Let me know any questions you have down below. I'll talk to you next time.